subscribers. We've heard a lot of your advice as members and supporters of our organization as to how we can improve our content on YouTube, as well as the people that we are showcasing. We're doing a lot of great work here at Atheists for Liberty, and we always are trying to make sure that we remain more consistent with these streams as the conversations become ever more interesting. We've tried to clip out more and more of these episodes into repeatable clips that can be spread throughout social media, and some of them gain quite a following. We had Gad Sad on, who was our most recent guest, and one clip alone about his exchanges with Sam Harris got over 1,100 views. Just a short clip for an ever-growing YouTube channel. But we do a lot as an organization. Atheists for Liberty does a lot, and we are contributing ever more to the ongoing culture war. Not only do we defend Enlightenment values here at Atheists for Liberty, though, but we seek to learn from the greatest minds of the 21st century. Our member of the week is Michael Benabib. Be like Michael and become a member today at atheistforliberty.org. All donations are tax deductible, and we use these donations to grow our programs and promote our mission. So without further ado, I'm going to read the bio for our amazing speaker and guest that we have on tonight, and we'll proceed from there. So Dr. Robert M. Price, born in Jackson, Mississippi in 1954, holds earned degrees from Drew University in systematic theology and New Testament. He's taught at Montclair State College, Bergen Community College, Drew University, Mount Olive College, and the Unification Theological Seminary. He's been active as a fellow of the Jesus Seminar and is a founding editor of the Journal of Higher Criticism. His published works include Beyond Born Again, Inerrant the Wind, Deconstructing Jesus, and many more. Price is the host of the Bible Geek podcast and a leading advocate of the Christ myth theory. He's a frequent debater and interviewee, and as well a proud member of the Atheists for Liberty Advisory Board. Dr. Price, welcome to the channel.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks.
I know we've been wanting to arrange this for quite a bit. The entire team has been trying to stack guests while simultaneously we plan for things like CPAC, while we are trying to reform our state director program, doing a lot of things. So I really appreciate your patience and your willingness to come on the program, especially, given everything that's going on these days.
Well, you got to stand in the gap and do your bit.
We're trying our best, and I appreciate too how we're matching. I said that when you came on in the lobby.
Yes.
Very fitting. We're not even, we're not doing the suit and tie here. We're going casual today, but I think it's going to still be an amazing chat. And so again, I really appreciate you coming on.
I always think of what Warith Deen Muhammad, the son of Elijah Muhammad of the Nation of Islam, what he said years ago addressing an audience. He came with an open collared shirt and said, you might wonder why I'm not wearing a tie. And he says, well, every time I wear one, I can't help thinking of the lynchings. Yeah, that's exactly right.
If we have to make like a promotional video just promoting the streams, I just love to take what you just said and have that be like, we'll put some money into Facebook ads and that'll just do it. Oh my God. So going straight into things with you, you're a controversy. Robert M. Price is a controversy in not only the atheist community that we'll talk about, but also throughout many other sectors, but for good reason. I think you speak your mind. And it's something I think that's more necessary in today's culture wars. We have a very diverse advisory board, and we do try to dispel the myth that Atheists for Liberty is only a right-wing organization, that we're like some Republican or conservative-only group. But one of the key things that we're trying to do is normalize atheism in conservative spaces, because no other national 501c3 nonprofit in the U.S. is doing what we're doing. And I think it's very important that if we have an advisory board and we talk about this diversity of thought, it's important that when we go to places like CPAC, our advisory board is not filled with only classical liberals or libertarians who happen to be open to a big tent. We should have people that are actually Republicans and actually conservatives who are also on our board. And I really do what I can. I'm doing what I can as president to make sure that we have that actual diversity of thought. And so I would argue that you're probably our most right-wing conservative advisory board member. And I think that is phenomenal. I think that is awesome. And so being from the perspective that you hold, often you probably speak to other people in the conservative movement, other people in probably the Republican Party too, and there's probably a good chunk of people that know that you're a non-believer. Um, from the lens of a conservative Republican atheist, is there anything that the right you think could do to improve, their own relations to atheists and to kind of take a page of what cancel culture has done via the left to make sure as well that maybe the right doesn't repeat the same mistakes?
Well, it's odd to me. It's ironic, at least, that cancel culture is, of course, a creature of the woke left, and some of them have a background in fundamentalist Christianity against which they have rebelled in a radical way, and they still maintain some of the same structures, you might say, mentally. Uh, Cancel culture is just a new name for what fundamentalists have always practiced as second degree separation, which meant that we're good fundamentalist Bible believing Christians, and we want nothing to do with those liberals and their denial of the authority of the Bible and all of that stuff. And if you, however, are willing to deal with them, well, then we don't want anything to do with you either. I mean,
Right.
your own opinions may be sound, but you shouldn't, like, how can two walk together unless they are agreed, as Amos, I think, says. And you're just cutting off your nose to spite your face with that. And that's what I haven't heard of that recently, but you used to hear it quite often with real hyper fundamentalists like Bob Jones University. And so they hated Billy Graham, strangely enough. I mean, he is like the evangelical in the minds of a lot of people, but in their eyes, he made the mistake of sharing the podium with United Methodists, American Baptists, and others who were much more diverse and liberals. Like the United Presbyterian Church had Angela Davis speak once, and the others said, "What the are you doing?" And so they said, look, naturally, we don't want anything to do with the likes of her, but since you don't seem to mind, we don't want anything to do with you either. And that's cancel culture. They
Yeah.
just didn't call it that at the time, and it's shunning, like Mennonites and Jehovah's Witnesses sometimes do. That something wrong with you, well, the door is henceforth slammed. And that strikes me as something I would like to help people get over, especially since one of the most amazing and positive things I see in political discourse, especially on Fox News, which has the misrepresentation of being just a propaganda mill for the right. I find it amazing that they'll have openly gay Republicans and conservatives on there, Tammy Bruce, the various other ones. A guy, can't think of his last name, but various ones who make no bones about that. And even with Caitlyn Jenner,
Yeah.
that little Bruce, right? It's like, what the heck? You're with us, and even more amazingly, the fact that people you used to think of as liberal lunatics, like well, I'm just going to start forgetting Glenn Greenwald. This guy seemed to be an America hating paranoid, but now it turns out he was right. And
Yeah.
so, or Naomi Wolf, like now she's an ally because some people understand that the woke and the left are not the same thing as liberals.
Right.
And now liberals and conservatives can make common cause. Well, I'd like to see that happen with atheists and conservatives, but you listen to Sean Hannity and a bunch of the others, Laura Ingraham. I like them. I agree with them politically on almost everything. But when they start saying, well, the left is attacking God and therefore undermining our our basis for morality. I understand what they mean, and there's something to that sociologically, what Peter Berger calls the sacred canopy. In all
Right.
traditional societies, you had like a kind of a dome of values, laws, mores, customs, etc. And the capstone of it was the belief that God or the gods, whatever, had created things and given these laws to Hammurabi or Moses or whoever. And therefore, that's what we have to do. And that's how we know that murder is wrong and helping people is right. Like, you wouldn't know that otherwise if you didn't believe in God. And I think I am quite sure I can explain to people. I did a column once in my Zarathustra Speaks column called Aquinas for Atheists. And I tried to show how this man, genius that he was, showed how morality is not arbitrary with or without God. Like, it could be arbitrary if you just said, God said, how about thou shalt not steal? Thou shalt do no murder. But tomorrow I may change my mind. It's whatever I say. I make the rules. That's arbitrary. That means nothing is inherently right.
And we'll kill you if you don't agree with us.
Yeah. Well, in fact, like Aquinas saw, yeah, that can't be right. You're going to wind up a Shiite terrorist if you look at it that way, or you should perhaps. But Aquinas said, no. Yes, God created us. He created us as a particular kind of creature, a social animal. And that means that certain things are going to be optimum for a functioning society, maximizing freedom and so forth, a social compact. If he'd have made us some other kind of critter, maybe we wouldn't need that.
Right.
But the point is, given what we are, our morality is pragmatic and makes sense. It doesn't depend on some big guy in the sky saying, oh, you better do this. And so even if you don't believe in the guy in the sky, you've got everything left: the social compact, pragmatic reality. It's not subjective. It's not arbitrary. And that's what conservative Christians are afraid of. They think that, oh no, it rests entirely on God's whim. And no, it doesn't. And that's why we can, on the basis of the issues, we wind up with you in many of these things. Don't happen to agree theologically, but what the heck? You don't have much trouble getting along with Mark Levin, who's a Jew. He doesn't believe in Jesus. That doesn't bother you. Why should this? And I would love to try to get that across, and it might come. I wouldn't be too surprised.
That's what we're trying to eventually do. I would love to see, and I say this to our operations team. I say this to Matthew too all the time. Like, I want Atheists for Liberty to be the organization that Fox News emails to try to get the atheist representative on the program. Well, here's the atheists that we don't think are crazy woke people, but maybe we disagree on this one issue. So here to talk is Robert Price, advisory board member of Atheists for Liberty, or Thomas Sheedy, president of Atheists for Liberty. Right? Like, that's eventually what I would like us to be, so we could have, elevate the secular dynamic just through maybe a different lens, at least on those programs.
Well, yeah, that'd be so helpful.
Yeah. We're getting there. We're improving the comms team. We're improving the press list. We're gaining more connections. So it's only a matter of time, and the streams help too with a lot of that. So you think that the right has a ways to go still when it comes to improving. Do you think that the right has recently been engaging in any of this kind of cancel culture behavior that we criticize the left of doing, or do you think that it's made a lot of strides recently, and at the moment we don't have much to worry about?
I think it's made strides. I don't, at least I'm not aware of people being this kind of picky. I mean, there are real, like the Bob Jones crowd. This goes back a couple of decades when the moral majority was getting started. Bob Jones University, etc., wanted nothing to do with them because they had Jews and Mormons in with them as co-belligerents. They didn't agree on everything theologically, but they did have the same basic values. They said, what the heck, why not cooperate? So they seem to me to be more pragmatic, or like Huckabee said when Romney was running for president. Huckabee, being a Southern Baptist, he says that he says to his fellow Protestant fundamentalists, look, I know Romney is a Mormon. We think some of his beliefs are heretical, but we're not electing a Sunday school teacher. We're electing a political figure who does agree with us. That that seems so obvious, but it isn't to a lot of people. I'm hoping that attitude will prevail, and you won't have this cancel culture among conservatives anyway.
Yeah. We're going to be combating it. We've done quite a bit of that recently in criticizing the right. Even we had Colin Wright on 2 episodes ago where we talked about how wrong Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson are for going after atheism. We have continuously made opinion pieces and statements and had on other guests to talk about this. And putting in a little bit of a promotional piece, we're going to be at CPAC 2023, guys. March 1st to the 4th in National Harbor, Maryland. They're moving things. CPAC team is moving CPAC back to DC. So we're going to be there. And not only is Atheists for Liberty going to have a booth this time, but we're going to be way, way more involved with CPAC and have some programming and things of our own. So if any of you are in the National Harbor or DC or Virginia area, stop on by, get a ticket, go into CPAC and say hi to Atheists for Liberty. We'd love to meet you and have you become a part of our community. So moving on to our next question. You were, like I said, you kind of have been known as this very controversial figure. And last year you kind of made the rounds in, I guess, the ghost of the atheist movement, or what remains of the atheist community, the social justice community, rather, is what we should call it these days. You got into a bit of controversy back in early 2022. So this would have been around February or March, I believe, of last year. You, if I remember correctly, were a co-host of a podcast or a YouTube stream with another gentleman, making the rounds within what remained of that community, discussing important things like skepticism and free thinking. But you were, I remember, deplatformed or disavowed for simply having political opinions about President Trump or former President Trump or other issues that have nothing to do with your stance on atheism or your stance on skepticism or free thinking at all. And the blogosphere, the social justice, what remains of the atheist community blogosphere, they went after you, I remember, quite a bit. And you were subject of a big controversy back then. I know you explained a little bit of your perspective in Facebook threads and also in other interviews, but I'd love to give you this moment of time to kind of explain kind of what's happened, and and for our audience to kind of know the mistreatment that you faced within that community.
Well, this, I think, really started with something I wrote. I edit anthologies of horror and fantasy fiction and so on, loads of them. And I mentioned I was a friend of Lynn Carter, and I'm trying to carry on some of his projects. He started this thing back in the 70s called Flashing Swords, and it was each one was a collection of stories by well-known fantasy writers, all kind of in the tradition of Robert E. Howard and Conan and so on. And they were all really good. He got really good stuff, and he got about 5 of them out. Well, this gap of years and years went by, but I did a one like it called The Mighty Warriors, and then another one just taking the title of his books, Flashing Swords. So number 6 came out. Well, in the introduction to that, like I hate anthology intros where they just are saying, you're gonna like these stories, oh, they're so great, and who needs that? So I said, let's make this more than just escapism. Why is it important to have this kind of sword and sorcery fiction? It's especially important as a counter blow to the emasculation of men in our society, and the radical feminism, the transgender confusion, and the rape culture accusations, and all manner of things like this, that we're in trouble culturally. And it has a lot to do with the family structure, the role of the father, male values. Maleness is not necessarily toxic. If you think it is, you're just anti-men. That's pretty clear, given who's making the case for that and the kind of stuff they say. And I said that you need a countervailing voice. Well, there's this whole genre of work by Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Tarzan, John Carter of Mars stuff, the Doc Savage novels. These were written in the 20s and 30s, but revived in paperback in the 60s, which is when I read them. And this had a big effect on me. And I realize now it's tough to even find the stuff, and it's really out of fashion. It's politically incorrect. And I said, well, that is why we need it. You should give your sons a diet of this. They'll be converted to reading, and they will see what real masculinity is all about. And it's not what you think, and it's what we need. Well, this really created a firestorm, because as the book, on the eve of publication of this Flashing Swords anthology, Amazon published almost all of the introduction. So they always give you like a sample, and that's what this was. And at least half of my authors said, oh, well, I can't be associated with this, and yanked their stories and said, you should have warned me. I said, look, I, as an editor, do not submit the material to the writers. It's the other way around. Right. And oh boy! So then the publisher began getting emails from people who had read this and said, "Well, if you publish this guy's work, I'm never buying any of your books again." So the publisher chickened out and yanked the rug out from underneath. And but it was no big deal, because it took a few more months, but I replaced all the stories with better ones, and released the book. And now another volume is in the works. But that is, they, on both atheist sites and literary sites, people were damning me left and right, and I could tell they couldn't have read it very carefully. They said that I was misogynist, though I have said many times that I think women are superior to men. But I said I would call myself.
Hear that, onlysky.com? Hear that, PZ? If you're watching, look at what Robert Price just said. We're conceding something to you here.
Yeah, Ashley
Montague give us a favorable rating now.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious, and that's okay with me. And in fact, I've always tried to promote women in ministry and so forth when I was a pastor and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just ludicrous. But what I said was, I would call myself a feminist, except that those who think they own the copyright on the term define it as including you're being pro-abortion and a member of the Democratic Party. Well, I'm neither and have no plans to be. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm not a feminist. I merely believe, as I've told my daughters, that they're at least the equal of any man. But that's not good enough. And so, or the transgender thing, oh, he's a transphobe, he's a homophobe. No way. And all I can conclude is that it's the old red flag thing. There, you know how they say is something's a microaggression,
Yes.
and that. It's like if they hear a certain word, they don't need to hear the opinion behind it. It's like, oh, what's this? You're not just cheerleading for transgenderism. You're a bigot. Come on. And so that's what happened to me, and various other people said they wouldn't work with me anymore. Oh, I didn't care really. I'd had the same thing happen a few years before at the big Lovecraft convention, the Necronomic Con up in New England, where I was one of the original organizers. But on some sort of I guess it was like the 100th birthday of Lovecraft, if he still been around, and they asked me to give the keynote speech at this, and I said, let's look at Lovecraft's amazing foresight, because he predicted the kind of cultural collapse we're seeing now, that the Western civilization is threatened, reason is threatened, and so on, and it's all come true amazingly. Oh, I mentioned jihadis and how you can't criticize them. Well, that's what Lovecraft said. Well, I found out shortly afterward that everybody was mortified at this, that I was an Islamophobe and so on. And I said, don't you see?
My favorite term.
Hmm?
My favorite term.
Yeah, if you think that someone protesting is Islamofascism or jihadi terrorism we're lumping them all together. I don't think that Muslims are all terrorists, but you must if you think that me criticizing jihadi terrorists is Islamophobic. It's insane.
Right. It's insane.
And so I had already gotten a huge backlash for that a few years before, so I was used to it, and I was it didn't really bother me. I've always been kind of a loner and an individual. I love friends of mine, but I don't. But anybody can be one. Like I pride myself in having real friends who are communists, Satanists, Muslims, gay, whatever. To me, it's like, why would you shut yourself off from these people? To understand reality, you need to see reality from as many sets of eyes as you can. And I don't need to refute anybody. I just want to understand. And so I'm very different than the way they paint me. But the final, I'm sorry, I'm going on and on forever.
Please. We're having you on.
The thing where I really got deplatformed was where I was on Myth Vision with my friend Derek Lambert. And we had a great time and doing all kinds of live chats and stuff. But somebody scared the hell out of him by saying, some scholar I won't name, saying, here's what this guy Price is on record saying. And if you continue to host him on the show, you won't get any other scholars to appear. So you better dump him or your show is over. Well, this guy, his whole income came from this. He had left everything to make this his job, and now is being threatened. So he agonized over it. And I said, look, I don't want you to suffer because of me. I'll just stop showing up on the show, and that'll be that. But instead, he sort of sided with the guy that was blackening my reputation. And I said, what happened here? Why did you do this? You know better. And it created a huge problem. And other comments I made about the Antifa riots and so on, people thought were, it's too nasty. And so I just kind of cut my ties to that, but I was still in demand on Jacob Berman's History Valley and various other ones. It's not like I made my living from that. It didn't really
Right.
matter. And now Derek and I are buddies again, and everything's calmed down.
Awesome.
I always thought he was doing a good job, even through that mess. So I have a hunch I've not seen the last of being canceled. But again, I don't care. Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I'm glad it doesn't. And I'm glad that you were able to persevere. You know, I think it's important that we just not even care what
Mhm.
these people think anymore, these
Mhm.
critics think, because the more we care about what I don't know, PZ Myers is going to say, or Hemant Mehta is going to post on their blogs, you know, because we don't agree with their social justice fit.
Mhm.
Anything that like there are liberals that have been canceled. You know,
Mhm.
you only have to even be right wing. That's not even a right wing thing. If you don't support any bit of their social justice agenda, that's outside of the purview of what this neutral atheist community was supposed to be, you're
Mhm.
canceled. You're bad. We need to remove you. We need to get rid of you. And
Mhm.
it's just absolutely horrible. So and one of the things that I know has irritated people from that movement, or what remains of it, about Atheists for Liberty, is that we don't care. In fact, not only do we not care, but we like to platform and grow our organization with the very people that these bloggers are
Mhm.
condemning. So
Mhm.
you
Wow.
and we got Shermer, we got Silverman, we got like nearly everybody who has been attacked, wrongly attacked by these people. And I'm just so glad. And it makes me want to have the advisory board be 3 times as large, just
Mhm.
filled with all the people that these people don't like, because it just makes me feel so good. And, you know, just
Mhm.
me waking up and seeing them upset, it puts a smile on my face. What,
Yeah. Yeah.
Thomas, you don't have God in your life. Robert Price, you don't have God in your life. What gives you purpose? That gives me purpose.
Mm.
Seeing them upset at the fact that we're building a better movement,
Mm.
and not caring at all what those loonies have to say.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
my little rant for today's show.
Mm. Well, I have found that some of these people who are high and mighty and self-righteous with the social justice propaganda seem to be doing their best to live down to the immoral stereotype that conservatives and Christians have of them. I've heard
Right.
various shocking things that indicate, good God, they don't have any morality. But
Yeah.
of course, I don't want to name any names or anything. But I thought, is it possible that they're actually living down to the stereotype that if you don't have God, you don't have morality?
Right.
Uh, Incredible.
And it means that we have to do twice the amount of work to disprove the stereotype to these people,
Mhm.
which is
Mm.
annoying.
Mm.
But I guess it does have to be done.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
speaking of this community, or what is left of the atheist community, right? If we have to have any pity upon it, and I consider Atheists for Liberty to somewhat be a part of it, even though we are doing our own thing on the most part. How can the atheist community improve? If you had to go to the drawing board and reconstruct this movement, how could this movement survive and improve, given your understandable and logical mistrust in its management?
Well, if there could be dialogues instead of debates. I've done a bunch of debates and I kind of got sick of it. Though I will say I've also made good friends with some of the people I have debated, and
Mhm.
that is a clue to me that if you can just meet other these ideological opponents on terms as friends and human beings, and be sincerely interested in why they think what they think. I think it's going to be tough for the hatred, the stonewalling to continue. And it's if you're not enemies and you're not dueling, that might
Mhm.
be a first step. I don't know how you guarantee that, but because I'm not sure what other than ideological zeal causes the hatred and the enmity.
Right. Well, I think it had to do with pointing fingers, right? This whole idea of mass sexism within the atheist community, within the atheist conference sphere, people feeling unsafe. How, you have to
Mm.
go with a buddy. And if you don't see the harassment and the hatred with the special goggles like they do, then something must be wrong with you. I think it came down to that. And I think I always like to use the Trojan horse analogy. We kind of let these people in thinking that they were humanistic when in
Mm.
reality they just torched the place.
Wow. Like I know there were a couple of cases where some guy at 4 a.m. at a conference found himself alone in an elevator with
Elevator gate.
and
Yeah.
would you like to go out for a cup of coffee? Rape! I don't know the facts of that. It's none of my business, but I found it almost humorous once I heard about how the radical feminists among the atheists had suddenly become even more socially just than thou, and
Right.
was ripping the thing apart. You speak of atheism as if it's tottering on its last legs, possibly. I haven't followed that. I don't know what is going.
Not atheism per se, but like the structure of like the former organizations and the conference circuits that have existed that have been taken over. Like some of them still do exist. They still do events, but they're dwindling. Their numbers are dwindling. You'll have like Skepticon, right? This used to be a massive event that would get like 1,000 people coming, or probably more for free. You get what, like 50 to 100 feminists now, showing up.
Wow.
Like it's sad. It's really, really sad to see. And you can look at like a lot of the different national conventions and initiatives. They are not exciting. They don't draw people in anymore. Why? Because of that infiltration and because of that ultimate destruction.
Wow.
Like half of the people that are on our advisory board are people that used to be associated with other organizations and other structures that once existed. They would have never joined something like Atheists for Liberty if Atheists for Liberty was never needed. I would have never created Atheists for Liberty if that was the case too. So it's just it's sad. It's sad, but it's necessary, and it's why that movement is on its last legs, and I would love to save it, but it's up to them. It's up to them on if they actually want to shake hands with us and actually be mature adults, or continue to be crybabies and call us racist and sexist and homophobic and Islamophobic and whatever else they want to come up with in their heads to make them happy. That's their lives now. Social justice, not even atheism anymore.
What's their excuse for that? Are there individuals who have blatantly done some of these non-kosher things, or is it all just projection?
It's a bit of both, from not platforming certain people at conferences to claiming that certain people stating certain things and not being in full lockstep with the agenda of certain circuits and initiatives means you have to be cast out. Like, we can also see what happened to Michael Shermer and David Silverman as great examples of this. People that were once held in very, very high regard now being condemned. Richard Dawkins, his 1996 Humanist of the Year award from the American Humanist Association being rescinded. And and guess what AHA did? This was in 2021. AHA rescinded Dawkins' award, and they gave the 2021 Humanist of the Year award to Anthony Fauci. So it's so pitiful, but there's a lot of great people that still have so much experience and accomplishments, and we want to promote these people, like with this show, platforming the greatest minds of the 21st century, which we consider you to be, one of those people. These are people who still have so much to give, either in terms of activism or their intellectual accomplishments. Let's pile them on into Atheists for Liberty. Let's get them on as stream guests or on the advisory board. I talk with, speaking of Matthew, I know I'm mentioning him a second time. We're already talking about, doubling in size and getting all these people that have been unjustly condemned from the so-called movement of diversity, the social justice, humanistic. It does, because we don't adhere to their humanistic values, apparently. Let's bring them all in. Let's be atheism minus the mess. Atheism that does just atheism. Thank you. That's what we're all about, and that's what we're going to do. And we're not going to do what the atheist community has been doing.
What happened with Michael Shermer? That's a new one on me.
So that, I think, was a 2014 case. Secular Student Alliance convention, somebody who I would argue, on a personal basis, is just not well. Went after him, accused him of harassment. And the good news is like even a good chunk of woke people saw that the case against Shermer was bogus. But I don't blame Michael Shermer for not wanting to show up
Yeah.
to anything that relates to any of these orgs anymore.
Mm.
He'll go on our show. We started the show with him. He was our first guest, but
Mm.
he stays clear. He goes to mostly libertarian events like Freedom Fest and other things that he's invited on. But yeah, like James Lindsay, when we had him on, he told me that when Peter Boghossian would go to atheist conferences,
Mm.
he would have to bring his kids. So he would have an excuse to not go to some of the after parties and some of the other parties, let's just say, that were at some of these places because he didn't want to get falsely accused of anything. Yeah, and this was the unprofessionalism that just plagued the movement. This is where the movement needed a bit more suit and tie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, brother.
But we want to bring, I now I feel like I'm the guest, but basically, just to shorten it, we want to bring on all the people such as yourself who have been unjustly condemned and attacked by these lunatics who killed the atheist movement. You guys are not deserving of having to be in a room and attacked and harassed by people who once claimed to be your friends, who once claimed to be your allies, who once claimed to believe in you and all the accomplishments that you've done, only to see it go to waste because a bunch of feminists don't like your stuff. Pathetic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me answering, I guess, my own question or your own question.
That's good.
But Matthew also told me that we'd be having a really cool casual discussion here. So I think we are doing just that. So I appreciate it. And we're getting a lot of questions and comments. Everybody who's watching, thank you so much for doing that. I'm going to make a few announcements before we go into Q&A here. Everybody, we have a Facebook page. So everybody, if you can go to facebook.com/atheistliberty, go like our page. We post a lot of awesome things there and announcements on future events. And I'm going to state this all the time. Become a member of Atheists for Liberty, guys, today at atheistsforliberty.org. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. All contributions are tax deductible, and we give away a lot of goodies, a lot of free prizes to really show that your donation matters. We don't have the multi-million-dollar budgets that some of these dying, dwindling organizations have, but we don't care because we believe in the process, and we want to actually make sure that through our baby steps and gradual growth, you guys believe in what we're doing. So membership contributions really do help. You get to join our Discord server and our Facebook group and be a part of our public speaking workshops and discussion nights. And we're going to be having a lot more events, especially events with advisory board members in relation to books and writings. So membership helps, guys, and it really means a lot. You can also follow us on Twitter, guys, at Atheist Liberty, and Instagram at Atheists for Liberty. All right, so we're going to proceed on to some questions and comments. Again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in so far. We got Rolling, who has a comment here. Thank you so much for tuning in, Rolling. Robert M. Price was the first person to make me start questioning the existence of a historical Jesus.
I'm in big trouble.
I know that's one of the other things that you're known for, too.
I used to think when I first heard of it that this idea that there was no historical Jesus, I thought this is insane. It's crazy. I guess the first book I read on it was G.A. Wells's The Jesus of the Early Christians. And in the margins, I was writing my little rejoinders to his arguments. But then when I was preparing notes for a college course on the life and teaching of Jesus, I thought, everybody ignores this guy in this position. I'm not going to do that. I want to interact with it. And I found, taking a second look, that a lot of what he said made more sense than I had first thought. And through the next few years, I would encounter new bodies of evidence, new perspectives. And I came to the point of thinking, there may have been a historical Jesus, but I now think the burden of proof is on anyone who would say there was. Could have been, but it's too late to tell now. And it looks an awful lot like various mythic heroes in the past. So
Yeah. I gotta say too, the people, the mythicists within the atheist community, they're a group of people that have kind of been downplayed, not as showcased, I would argue, as much. In fact, a lot of people don't know this. For those of you who are involved in the culture wars and know of Myth Informed, they're an organization that kind of started out as an atheist group that mainly got their popularity in Wisconsin for questioning the existence of a historical Jesus. That's a valid debate and conversation to be had. And I know they platformed you too. They showcased a lot of your stuff on their social media in the past. But they were also subject to a lot of harassment and hate from the woke people who took over the movement. So
now, what problem would the wokesters have with that?
So they had a conference, MythCon 4. So this was in 2017, and they platformed Sargon of Akkad, and they platformed Armored Skeptic and Shoe on Head and a few other like YouTube atheist personalities. They now mostly do politics, but they simply were proudly showcasing the diversity in the YouTube atheist scene that a ton of people were watching. So many people were watching Sargon of Akkad videos that wouldn't watch, say, the instructional video on feminism from the American Humanist Association or a Secular Student Alliance webinar. These are people that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. And the MythCon or myth-informed people were responsible for trying to bring on headline talent, to have debates and to bring on people from the left and the right to talk about the future of the atheist community. And so at MythCon 4 in 2017, there was a big condemning where a ton of the atheist community would not even dare associate with Myth Informed. They platformed Sargon up on stage, and then they had Thomas Smith, who's a woke feminist atheist activist, to debate Sargon. And he kind of, after the main questions of when more Q&A was going on, Thomas Smith cowardly left the stage like a crybaby. And during the middle of the event. They also had to deal with a lot of hysterical, like, mental health breakdowns from some woke atheists that went to their events, condemnations, and different perspectives from Seth Andrews, who was in the audience, Matt Dillahunty. It blew up. It blew up. This whole entire event blew up, and that was another one of the big events that was seen as one of the big things that split the new atheist community apart. And they got into similar controversies in 2018. I'll give Richard Carrier some credit here. Richard Carrier was seen as one of the big proponents of Atheism Plus. In fact, he was the guy, I think, who basically coined it. And I'll give him credit, he went back on his previous claims, and he apologized as well to people who he affected negatively by that. And he had a lovely discussion with Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin, on stage at MythCon 5 in 2018. And Sargon was expecting to be up against a big radical hardcore feminist, and actually Richard Carrier was a lot more professional and respectful than he was in the past. And Sargon ended up making a video apologizing to Richard Carrier, which I appreciate Sargon for doing. So the Myth-informed people, they were really responsible for trying to bring on an actual healthy set of dialogue, not just biased right-wing speakers, but they wanted lefty people on too. They wanted feminists and radicals on too, to actually discuss their viewpoint. But we, as the diverse humanistic atheist community, no, we can't dare be associated with MythCon. We cannot dare be associated with Myth Informed, who were just doing the same thing that they were always doing, and they got left in the dust. They got attacked, they got left in the dust, and they got ostracized and harassed to where they just stopped doing atheism stuff entirely and just went on to doing politics. And I don't blame them.
Wow. Boy, there's all kinds of stuff I've been blissfully ignorant of.
It's kind of a good thing, because the more you start to know of this stuff, the more you start to realize it's a long trek for us, but we're accomplishing it. And I would argue we represent the majority of atheists, because most atheists, left or right, aren't this crazy. So it's just crazy stuff. But Rolling, thank you so much for your comment there.
Mm.
All right, bit of a casual question here. What's this dude's favorite superhero? Okay, we got a bunch of figures I see in the back in your background there. If you had to answer that question, God, I'm giving you such softballs. What?
Yeah, I'd say it would be Superman. But with Spider-Man as a close second. I've always loved both of them, and really fascinating. I won't go into it, but I have this whole spiel about how comic book superheroes are the modern mythology, and they have a great depth, at least some of them, going back to mythic archetypes that you don't have to know about to appreciate the power they lend to this stuff. And I mean, I don't need to dignify it and legitimate it and because it's really a childish thing. I don't care. I just happen to love the stuff. I always did. Like, I love Universal monster films and stuff like that. There's nothing I've ever been involved with and interested in that I feel the need to give up. I rather integrate it all, which is not that difficult to do because there's some underlying commonality that explains why all these things appeal to me. So I'm a champion of pop culture as well, of certain kinds.
So speaking of Superman and speaking of pop culture, we actually have a question here, an amazing question from Stephen. Thank you, Stephen, for tuning in. Does Robert think Henry Cavill was removed from his role due to politics? I'm assuming his role is Superman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
I don't know what his politics are. I know that they were just doing a big reboot, giving the whole DC cinematic universe into the charge of what's his name that did Guardians of the Galaxy.
God, he's doing Suicide Squad too.
Yeah,
what's his name?
I knew it a second before I needed to say it. James Gunn.
James Gunn. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was literally gonna actually take out my phone and look it up live on the air.
And so he's planning on changing it, but apparently he says he wants to do a reboot that focuses on Superman as a younger man, but without doing the origin story again, which everybody knows. So I'm glad at least we don't have to sit through that again. But he may just, I believe he also expressed a liking for Grant Morrison's take on Superman in his works like the New 52 reboot of Superman and All-Star Superman. I like that stuff too, so I expect it to be good, but I have no idea what Cavill's politics are.
Fair enough. Me neither. I'm assuming, like most celebrities, at least what they say to the public, they're left-leaning. Maybe even if some of them are secretly right-wing. I would assume he's on more the left than the right. But good question.
Gunn is way over on the left, I'm sure.
I bet. We got Matthew asking a question. Hey, Matthew, thank you so much for tuning in. Dr. Price, do you think ignoring the woke mob and continuing forward is a good strategy against cancel culture?
When I was in the Jesus seminar, Bob Funk, who started it, said, we can try to address all of our critics and show why they're wrong, but we'll never get anything new done that way. Let's just ignore them and not let them be this sucking pit because they're trying to retard your efforts. Just ignore them and say, let's go our separate ways, more power to you, but this is our project. So I think that's the way to go. You don't want them to set the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. Rolling, asking a very good question. Are you working on any new books at the moment, either on Cthulhu, atheism, or politics?
I'm waiting to hear back from a publisher on a massive book I completed called Houses of the Holy, a higher critical survey of the world religions, where I try to outline the history and doctrinal development of the major well-known religions and some other ones like Mandeans, Yazidis, Baha'is, and all that are at least as interesting, but not so well known. So that's I've just finished. I just finished writing up a novel synopsis by Lynn Carter called Thongor Conquers the Underground World. And I am supposed to be working with a friend down at Texas Tech, communications professor, on a book called Not Peace But a Sword, examining the widely taken for granted idea that the early Christians were pacifists until the time of Constantine, and then sort of became corrupted. And I say that that's really slanted and based on fallacies. And I go into the possibility that there was a historical Jesus who was a revolutionary would-be king, because I regard that as sort of the number two plausible view of the historical Jesus. If there was one, I think that's what he was. So I've written my share of that book, and I'm waiting for my friend to do whatever he's gonna on it. I have a new book that's just come out called The Gospels Behind the Gospels, where I have a new paradigm for why does Jesus appear to be several different kinds of Jesus in each gospel? Is it because somebody had taken the puzzle pieces of earlier accounts of Jesus that consistently saw him as John the Baptist raised from the dead, the prophet like Moses, the returned Elijah, the man who would be king, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I try to reorganize all that stuff and give an idea of what these hypothetical original gospels would have been like. So that one's done and out just now. So I'm always working on new books of different kinds. Oh yeah, I got another sword and sorcery anthology coming out, Flashing Swords #7, and various horror story anthologies too. So I got all kinds of irons in the fire.
In this case, I'm actually going to put in a little bit of a plug. So again, everybody, join Atheists for Liberty. Go to atheistsforliberty.org and become a member. But one of the benefits that we actually have, if you become an all-around heretic or above, it's one of our membership tiers, you can choose to have a free signed copy of a book from any of our advisory board members. We will ship it to you. And actually, Dr. Price, I know we were speaking a little bit in the lobby before doing this about how we're going to work with you soon on trying to get some copies of your books too, because we would love to showcase some of your works too and provide them to any of our all-around heretics or above who want to read a little bit more and explore your works.
Great. So
everybody, again, atheistsforliberty.org. Get involved more, become a member, and request a book of your choice. We do the best we can to make sure that we fulfill them as quickly as possible. So let's see. Boy, we have a ton of questions still coming in. We got Max asking this question. You mentioned Doc Savage. Doc's cousin, Patricia Savage, was a great example of a strong female character. Take that, woke feminists. We support strong female characters. Robert Price supports strong female characters. You heard it here from the 1930s. The idea of strong female characters is a new thing is false. Yes. I know.
That's right. Yeah. Pat Savage appeared only in one Doc Savage novel, unfortunately, but what an interesting character. And Lynn Carter, who loved all pulp literature, brought her into his Prince Zarkon series, which is sort of a group of 5 Doc Savage pastiches. And he had the various 30s pulp heroes getting together, and he had Pat Savage having married, I think it was Thunder Jim, or one of the Doc Savage clones from that time. So he revived her a little bit. In my sword and sorcery anthologies, not by any affirmative action quota thing, I wound up having at least 3 or 4 female sword slingers in there in all of the collections. Varla of Valkarth, which is a Thongor spinoff by a couple of guys in the UK. Tonga of Lemuria, which is a comic book appendix to the book. And of at least a couple more. And so to me, it really, it's no big deal. You're talking about the same sort of action and the same sort of character, male or female, who cares? I had a couple of African male heroes in the first one. Unfortunately, I think both of those authors died since then. But I would, if I knew of other ones, I'd recruit them too. I mean, there I would, and again, it wasn't because, got to have some African American in there. No, it's just that these guys were well-known authors of this kind of stuff, and so I wanted them.
That's how I think we should treat pop culture. I don't really care what skin color or gender a character is. If the individual is good to play that character or to be in a literary work, so what?
Yeah.
So let's see what we got here. Okay, let's get into some more drama. Rowling says you've always been friendly with other scholars like fellow Christ mythicists Richard Carrier and David Fitzgerald, and fellow Lovecraft scholar S.T. Joshi. Are you still on good terms with them?
Well, I certainly am with ST, who I've known for like 35 years, and he is just a wonderful guy and a good collaborator and colleague. I've always gotten along well with Richard Carrier in person, though I keep hearing things that he has said behind my back that make me a little less inclined to have affection for him. But as far as he's been to my face, I just sort of pretend that's all that's going on.
Right.
And Dave Fitzgerald, he's a great guy, a brilliant man, and I have him doing reviews for the Journal of Higher Criticism that I edit. So I still am on formally or more than that friendly terms with all 3 of those guys, as well as people that I debate: Bob Siegel, Greg. Oh my God, what's the matter with me? Boyd, and various others. I've had Gary Habermas at Liberty University. Once you show that you appreciate them as people, it's so fascinating to be friends. Like Bob Siegel, who's a conservative radio host, both an evangelical and a Republican, I think. When we first met, we went out for pizza and we discovered we were both big Star Trek fans and so on. It didn't make any difference that we had radically different views about God. Well, yeah, of course we do. That's why we're here. But that doesn't have to turn you against anybody. So, yeah, I get along with everybody if they're willing to get along with me.
I'm reminded. I ended up speaking at Freedom Fest last year in Vegas, and I platformed Michael Shermer and Eric Metaxas. I brought them up on stage where Eric was debating Shermer on the topic of "Is atheism dead?" In fact, that's the title of one of his most recent books, called "Is Atheism Dead?" It's a bunch of BS in my view, but he is the nicest guy behind the scenes. We had an amazing conversation. I would love to, one day go to New York and try to have lunch with him to try to pick his brain a little more, see if we can maybe even have a debate here on the channel or something like that. Because it really comes to show that besides that one matter, we probably agree on a bunch of other different topics. I know he's like a conservative radio host as well. And then to add on, when it comes to questions about your relations, Rowling also asks, I've been listening to some old Point of Inquiry episodes with you as the host. Are you still on good terms with the Center for Inquiry or any other nonprofit atheist organization besides AFL?
Well, not really, but it's mainly, I guess, I mean, I know they fired me because they didn't like the fact that I had voted for George W. Bush. And I didn't know that until one of the newer board members confided in me and told me that. Well, what the heck? I also got dumped from Johnny Coleman Theological Seminary for the same thing. I was politically conservative, though that was not what I was teaching about, but they just couldn't tolerate me. I maintained a good friendship with the great Tom Flynn from CFI, a really affable and talented and hilarious man. And so through the years, we would do a little editing or writing favors for each other. But most of the other people I knew, like the great Paul Kurtz, no longer with us. I had great affection for him.
My father's old professor.
Yeah.
I
have a hunch he probably had a hand in getting rid of me, but I can overlook that. I was proud to know him.
Yeah, I do know. I will say this about CFI. I know some people that are in CFI that are just phenomenal, amazing people, and I know that, especially within some of the remaining orgs, there are some classical liberal voices that still haven't gotten fired or removed or canceled just yet. Clock is ticking, I would argue. Who care very much about the mission of AFL and care very much about the kind of things that we're promoting. Still very much respect them. And I'll also say this, and I've said this on a few of our streams: if the head of American Atheists or Dan or Annie Laurie from FFRF or Robin Blumner from CFI or Kevin Bowling from the Secular Student Alliance or any of these other executives, if any of them gave me a call or sent me a DM or sent me an email tomorrow and asked to put aside our differences and to work together on, one related project or something here and there for the cause of normalizing atheism or promoting skepticism or free inquiry, I would jump on board immediately and say yes. And it's my hope that maybe as our fight against wokeism continues, maybe we can try to save. I think us trying to save has kind of failed, but who knows? One day, if there's an opportunity to help save some of these entities, to keep them afloat, to help out Atheists for Liberty and the original atheist mission, I think it's a good thing. But yes, there's some good CFI people who still are in the trenches there. So I got to give credit where it is, where it's due. We got Dan asking a good question. Has Robert ever deconverted a conservative? I'm assuming Dan means like conservative Christian. Does he have any advice and tips for doing so?
Well, I've heard from various people that one guy who was a missionary in Africa and somehow got a hold of my first book, Beyond Born Again, which was a real systematic assault on evangelicalism, though not really of its theology so much as just crummy arguments and social mores that just drag them down. They're superfluous. And years later, I did a similar book called Jesus Christ Superstition, where I said, look, I am not trying to condemn Christianity, but here's a bunch of stuff you'd be better off without. Well, this man read the first one, and it led to him chucking the whole thing and writing a book of his own. And I know I have heard of and I guess met people over the years that were challenged by stuff I either said in debates or in books, and they thanked me for helping. Well, a lot of them actually was instrumental in freeing them up. And my attitude, which I always say at every opportunity, is if you are having a fulfilling, meaningful time with your religion, it's okay by me. Your beliefs are none of my business, but there are problems with what you and your spokesman say, and I feel that as far as the Bible and apologetics go, I feel like it's like professional ethics that I have to stand up and say, wait a minute, what's his name of the Case for Christ? This guy, Lee Strobel, he's a fraud, and and his books are very popular, and I feel like I have to respond to this. I don't know how many people will ever read what I have to say, but you can't, if you're a New Testament scholar, you can't just let that go by. But I don't say, well, why don't you give up this stupid religion? No, I have respect for all of them.
Gotcha. And that's one of the great things I love about our advisory board. We have diversity of thought with how the different atheists that we have on there treat religion or think of religion. You know, we have some of the most fiery and militant atheists that you can imagine. And we have people that are a little more softer, a little more humanistic, some would say, pertaining to that. And we need people with that diversity of thought to make sure that our mission is successful.
If you call yourself a humanist, how do you justify despising one of the major creations of the human spirit? You have to become an anthropologist in a sense. Nothing human should be alien to me if I am a humanist. I don't have to believe it all. That'd be impossible unless you're a multiple personality, but you can admire and respect the beauty and the genius in all these things and regret their shortcomings. I mean, that's what we do with ourselves.
Religion's a part of human history. You know, it's how we came to be where we were today. You know, questions answered, at least to the best of people's ability in the past, of where the sun went at night and what happens when we die. You know, we each have our own different strategies and viewpoints from there, but I think it's a very valid point to make. We'll go ahead and platform one last question for the evening before I close off the show. Why is all religion entwined in a culture? If God is going to change everybody to his fold, is not a contradiction?
Religions are the product of culture and an organic part of it, and it usually is like the canopy, the sacred canopy, and the capstone of it that organizes people's worldviews and gives them moral guidance. I don't think you need religion for that, but that is how religions have begun. But when you say, "Oh yeah, Apollo gave us these laws," or Jehovah gave them to Moses, or Shamash gave them to Hammurabi, what you're really saying is these are of ultimate significance. We can't just disregard this stuff. So here's what we're going to live by. And I think that's a kind of mythological view, maybe even a superstitious one, but it's part and parcel of a culture and its worldview. And that's why, like in our country, the society has become so pluralistic, ethnically, politically, and religiously, that nothing holds us together anymore, not even the anonymous second religion of patriotism. We used to have that in common, but I remember I was speaking at an atheist college group, and one young lady said that she felt that patriotism was religion, and that a real atheist would not be patriotic. And I understand the logic there, but I think it's wrong. It's unfortunate, but I see what she means, because and this is what people like Charlie Kirk and others are afraid of, that if you don't have that heavenly bureau of weights and measures telling you what's right and wrong, like what's his name, Prager says this, then it's all just, if there's no God, everything goes. No, I think that's wrong. That's easily shown to be wrong. But believing that, you can see why they're sold on religion and unwilling to give it up.
I think that is a very good point to bring up, and we're going to continue to dispel that myth time and time again. We're going to continue. There's a lot more news that's coming out with them, stating this, some of that useless rhetoric. And well, we got to just have more and more guests like yourself to debunk that stuff. So I think that is a good way to end the show on the most part. So a few final announcements for all of you. You guys like what you're seeing so far? We got this YouTube channel. Right now, with all of you watching, be sure to subscribe. It takes a second to just click the subscribe button, like the video. It helps the algorithm, and it helps us get more outreach to more people, and hit the notification bell to see more content. We come out with clips every Monday. We do these streams every Thursday at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, where we try to platform the greatest minds of the 21st century. And again, tune into this channel, guys, every week to see more content. Again, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Another announcement, like I said earlier in the stream, for those tuning in later or seeing this later on, we're going to be at CPAC 2023. Speaking of normalizing atheism in more spaces, March 1st to the 4th in National Harbor, Maryland, the American Conservative Union is moving CPAC back to Washington, or Maryland, right across the river from Washington. So it's basically DC, guys. Come get a ticket. If you're going to CPAC already, come over, say hi to Atheists for Liberty. We're doing a lot of great stuff that we want all of you to be involved in. Follow us on Twitter, guys. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. And again, if you like seeing what we are doing as an organization, become a member of Atheists for Liberty today at atheistsforliberty.org. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we do a lot of great work, from these streams to church-state separation activism to normalizing atheism in spaces that the wokies see as unconventional. Well, too bad for them. We're enjoying this quite a bit, and we are going to be, again, streaming every single Thursday, where we want to continue defending what is right in this new age of reason. Dr. Price, thank you so much for coming on the channel. It means a lot.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Have a great evening. See you next time.